Hello, and welcome to this webinar by Express Publishing regarding how to teach teenagers. Today, I'm George, first of all, George Kokolas, and I would like to introduce some basic principles that can be found in Express books for all of you who may be teaching teenagers classes, or all of you who maybe in the future will do so. We have certain basic principles. We try, when we teach teenagers, to make the books and the tasks as interesting as possible, so to attract attention. Always the teenage mind is very complicated. Kids go through a very difficult period at that particular time of their life. So even learning can become a very particular function and a very particular, let's say, process. That is why what we try to facilitate through the Express Publishing books is that they get as many resources as possible, so to be able to absorb this knowledge at that particular sensitive age group. The first book that I would like to show you and share these principles is Write On. Write On is one of our best-selling right now teenager series. It's almost a brand new book, came out just a couple of years ago. And it contains all the necessary methodology, all the current modern methodology for teaching teenagers. Let's have a look at some of these principles I was telling you before. The first one is that we always need to start with a very, very structured way of lesson. And this is something that you can find in all the Express Publishing books. So I think the basic goal of education and the basic goal of a lesson, specifically in a foreign language, is how much of this lesson you will be able to understand. So it's important if we want the students to understand, it's important if we want to achieve knowledge, it's important if we want to make sense of what we are saying, to offer as much resources as possible, as much input as possible regarding explaining of a known vocabulary, a known language. So we always start a lesson with a vocabulary presentation through visuals. You will see in each one of the units of Write On, there are always some pictures, picture prompts, there are always images, there are always other resources, or even you can use the realia from the classroom in order to present vocabulary. However, when you open the book, vocabulary presentation through visuals will always be there, so to assist your students understand what does pepper mean, what does sugar mean, what does butter mean, simply by seeing the picture. And you don't have to use necessarily L1 in order for these words to be explained, which we consider this to be a really important step. After the presentation of vocabulary, the same happens with grammar presentation. We will talk a lot about grammar later on, but what I want you to see here is that there are specific templates, there are specific tables where grammar presentation is visually again explained, in the majority of the times through some comic stripes. At this stage, we also believe that apart from explaining the theory and apart from providing the necessary info, or as we call it, the rules of grammar, it's important that the students have a visual explanation of grammar and understand what actually the grammar phenomenon is all about. Then grammar becomes easier in order to be understood and easier in order to be also absorbed. The same happens, when we reach the point where we need to activate this new material. We do believe that it's pointless simply to know by heart all the theory of grammar if you are not able to use it. So in every single section in Write On and in every single book by Express Publishing, specifically course books, you will see that after the clear presentation of both vocabulary and grammar structures, there is always the activation of the new learning. This is when language becomes alive. This is when language becomes in context and at the same time is becoming meaningful, as I mentioned before. So yes, you will have a very clear presentation, but at the same time, you will have the activation of new learning, specifically grammar and vocabulary. The same is happening with the vocabulary I was telling you before. Right here, you can see on the spot, you can express the likes, the dislikes of exactly what you like after you have been presented to the vocabulary before. And of course, how could we possibly have a new series without focusing on the 21st century skills? Bear in mind that everyone is talking about that, specifically in classes of ELT, because this is exactly what your students will need out there. Not necessarily only language, but also the ability, the skills to communicate, to collaborate, and to think in that particular language. Language is simply the vehicle. Your students need to be trained how to deal with these specific skills, because they have actually been proved as very, very important for creativity. And that's exactly what language is all about. It's about that you should be able to communicate, but at the same time, use this very same input in order to create something new. We need to realize, and we need never to forget, that the people who are having the best of jobs, and right now what is extremely sought and rewarded, are new ideas. Companies and people do not look for another person who will actually parrot something that it has been said before. People need people who can actually generate new ideas, who have this unique way of thinking for being creative, progressive, and moving forward. And this is exactly what you can actually practice here for opportunities for creativity. The same is happening for opportunities for collaboration, because right now we are living in a world that we need to learn how to work in teams. So anything that has to do with project time, anything that inspires children or gives you the opportunity to assign teams and kids to work together on a project does foster this particular function, an opportunity for collaboration, a chance for kids to get together and start, working on a project or something like that. I'm very proud to tell you that Express Publishing is maybe the only English language teaching publisher right now that promotes, fosters, and cultivates public speaking. We need not to forget that public speaking is not simply an academic skill, which is actually very useful for your students that will go to college or to the university. If they can present in a foreign language, this means that they have an extra advantage, an extra plus for their studies. But also I dare say that even in the corporate world, public speaking has become an extremely, extremely needed skill. So imagine that you have teenagers, that you have kids in your classes that have this opportunity of practicing public speaking skills in the classroom, 100% integrated to what they have been taught before. All the material, all the vocabulary, all the structures are actually being united and unified into a lesson for presentation. And this is exactly what we are asking you to teach. At the end of each one of the units, you will find units like that, presentation skills, where they simply give them the opportunity to stand in front of an audience and maybe, not giving a very long presentation, but day by day, hour by hour, lesson by lesson, they get the hang of it. And eventually they can actually shrug off from their shoulders or from their personality any kind of fear regarding public speaking. Everything is there for them to follow. We do believe that education is the right moment to have values, to teach some values. Values are what we have now. Values are what forms actually our personality. So in every single lesson, having these reminders about values of life, a healthy eating habit, or respecting the environment, or respecting your friends, can be a great plus to this book. And all this comes from the context of the English language textbook, as we thought before. Developing of thinking skills doesn't have to do only with the generation of new ideas. Has to do with how constructive, how well organized, and how justified your arguments are. So when I'm asking you to think about something new, I don't necessarily need for you to generate some ideas, but I need you to have the context. I need you from A to get to B, from B to get to C in a pretty organized way, because this is the structural way that is going to be needed out there when you are going to continue your academic studies or find a work somewhere else. Preparing students for the future, because writing an email, for example, or even a blog entry are the writing templates and the writing genres that are mostly needed right now in the world outside. Yes, you can definitely write a composition. Yes, you can definitely write an article, but we try to provide all this realistic context for the students of the future and try to prepare students for what is going to be followed later on. So many emails, many blog entries, and different other types that really help the students work and develop this realistic type of writing. Across cultures, getting to know about other cultures and compare them with your own cultural individuality, promoting your own cultural individuality is a must in our books. This is something which is all the time in a way dictated or recommended by current methodology. We learn about other cultures not necessarily because we want to feel like the superiority of these other cultures, but we want to compare other cultures to ours and try to elevate, try to praise our own culture in different ways. For example, regarding food, maybe monuments, even history. You know, we always try to find common positive traits, and in that way, trying to compare the two cultures, but at the same time, elevate our own culture as well. See if we have similar traits or characteristics. Keeping a positive attitude is always a must, and that's why we have specific fun sections where the students can take a break, they can take a breath, but at the same time, continue learning. Because sometimes that's what you need to do. After you have presented what you have presented, you actually need some time for the students to stretch a little bit, take a breath, and somehow continue their lesson. Let the knowledge sink in is what we are trying to do in these specific fun sections that you can see here. And we talked about presentation, we talked about activation of grammar. We should never forget that expressing yourself in fluent English is also a realistic writing activity. So we always have optional additional writing practice and a very structural way on how, you know, to develop a model, on how to develop writing, and how, you know, to develop and boost your own writing skills. Because for us, writing is also something 100% realistic and something that cannot be missed from our classes. All the book is organized in modules, which means that we set some objectives in the beginning of the module, and at the end of the module, we check whether these competencies have been achieved, if you have managed it with vocabulary, reading, listening, speaking. This is the Now I Can section where the students are asked to tick in the boxes and actually check whether they have achieved their own goals. And of course, theme-related videos, I'm going to show you just a very small piece of it.
The Eat Well Guide. Do you want to eat healthily but don't know how? Well, now there's the Eat Well Guide to help you. Let's take a look at it. Drinks. It's very important to drink 6 to 8 glasses of water every day to stay healthy. Water is always a good choice, but milk, tea and juices are okay too. Bread, rice, potatoes, pasta and cereal. These foods give us a lot of energy, so it's important to eat them. Fruit and...
As you have probably seen already, we are examining and going through a unit that refers to foods. So imagine that for every single unit that you have a particular theme, that you also have a particular video. All these videos are 100% owned by Express Publishing. They are offline, they are in high fidelity of sound and picture, and can be found in all our digital resources that come along the book. And the most important thing, they are for free and fully available for the teachers, the theme-related videos. And because it's not only about the books, but it's also about technology, technology with meaning, technology with a purpose. That is why you can see that Right On and many of our series, they have an interactive whiteboard software where you can deliver the whole lesson through digital resources. There is the iBook, which is for the student, exactly like the interactive whiteboard software, but without the answers. And you also have a Moodle-like platform, Express Digibooks, all of them fully available for you, number one, and number two, totally related to the topics of the book. Now, I'm going to switch presentations because I'm going to refer to a different book. We have seen about Right On, and now it's time to have a very quick reminder about an old friend, Access, the most accessible teenage course. Again, we're talking about teenagers, and you will see that even this book came out quite some years ago. It still has the same principles like Right On, which is brand new. However, it's still a bestseller, and we still have it in many different markets where it's still successful, and we simply, many teachers do trust it and rely on it. We always have a starter unit before the beginning of the book. The starter unit, in a way, helps a lot using the jargon of the classroom, number one, and provide some basic vocabulary for what is going to follow. And then it's more than obvious in Right On, but we haven't commented on that, but it's really obvious in Access, is that when we are talking about teenagers, you cannot attract their attention with something that it's not age relevant to their age group. So this is like pivotal, this is fundamental, this is crucial when the authors write a teenager's book. We cannot have themes or issues that do not concern the teenagers. They have to be age related and according to their age group. That is why we may have something about Spider-Man, or we may have something about the first classes of school or high school. This is back then when Steve Gerrard and Shakira were famous, famous teens, or The Art of Transformation as well, movies, interesting topics that refer to teenagers. All these can actually be part of this age-relevant material. And of course, we need to offer always some positive influence. So getting to know the families, the story of J.K. Rowling and how she became, in a way, rich and famous overnight. And it's a very nice story just to share. Or even topics that refer to novelty. We always have this idea that the brain is intrigued by what is new and what is completely refers to novelty. So what alcohol does to your body, or how you can become an addict, okay, creating a more responsible generation as well. You remember we were talking about the values previously in Right On. So a text maybe about global warming, or how you can make a difference with reforestation and planting new trees, how you can help by collecting rubbish, are also important parts so to attract their attention. And of course, something that can be found also in Right On, but I kept it separately for this presentation, is that we should never forget that there is nowhere a separate manual for studying. So when we have a book, when we have a material, or when we have the opportunity in a classroom to remind to our students how they can learn to learn, how can they learn how to study, and giving them these tips every time there is a specific activity or a task where this can be applied, and use them as a reminder or as a point of reference that, look, this is how you can use dictionaries. This is how you can remember grammar structures. This is how you can avoid repetition. We create this culture of learning to learn skills. And this is something that most of the teenagers may have been expecting from us in every possible context. So learning to learn skills can actually be really helpful, because when they go back, when they go home and they maybe have a question, or they may be wondering themselves, how am I studying this? They simply can go backwards and always refer to these kind of things. Also, the idea of self-access, creating autonomous learners. ICT, of course, it's not a very new idea, but still, children do practice ICT, and working in groups using the internet is something that requires certain principles. It's something that requires ways of doing this. So all the time, we give specific sites, we give specific guidelines on how this to be done, and we never leave them alone on the internet. The presentation and activation of grammar is something that we saw on Right On. Everything is very, very clearly explained with tables, charts. The same stands for the activation through speaking. As I said before, as you can see, presentation is not enough. You know, to be able to activate grammar phenomena in order to dominate the language, and in order to be able to use them effectively and communicatively. Specific parts of section of speaking sections, because communication is all about the language. Language becomes meaningful. If I cannot use what I am learning, if I cannot use them for communicative purposes in order to be able to convey or get the message across, it's going to be very, very complicated. And the same stands for writing. In Access, you will find specific units who are dedicated to writing in a very scaffolded, structured way to do this. We always give the input beforehand, hand by hand, step by step, and when the writing time comes, there is always a plan, there is always a demo, there is always a point of reference, a model where the students can actually use it and produce a decent piece of writing. We talked about the cultural sections before. This is what you can find here, and compare the two cultures and elevate your own culture. Contemporary spoken English, specific sections on communication. This is not happening only with grammar. It's it's remarkable that both in Right On and in Access, even from level 1, that's why I'm showing you level 1, you have specific lessons fully dedicated to speaking, which means that you get into this systematic practice of speaking skills, starting from a very, very early stage. Teach your students how to communicate, and they will fully appreciate this. And, you know, you have all the skills working around this time of speaking. It's a little bit difficult to create an immersion status in a non-native English ELT classroom. So that's why systematically practicing these activities can actually be really helpful. And the same happens for, you can see, we offer the input, everyday English, set of phrases that help the students deliver these tasks. And of course, a positive transfer, which means that I'm learning what I'm learning, but also, as I said before, there is a meaning to all this. So where am I using it? How am I using it? What exactly am I doing with this? Can be something that the students may be wondering. And this is something that you can offer through all these different activities from both Access and Right On, simply putting in practice all the language learned before. Also here in Access, what is introduced maybe not for the first time, but it's actually something, it's not again a new trend, but what you get here is as the full integration of CLIL, of cross-curricular material to the rest of the book. So you have geography, you have citizenship, you have specific sections that what they practically do is use the vocabulary and the structures taught before, so to offer new language from a new perspective, from a new channel. That's another part of the themes. That's another issue of these themes that are added in order to attract this inquisitive teenager brain that may be asking for that. And of course, you also have reference sections when you should go back to the workbook, when you should actually use the workbook in order to have some extra practice. Everything is coded and indicated into these specific pages. At the end of the book, you can have the self-check sections. The idea is that the students themselves are actually involved in this idea of assessment, so they can put and assign a grade on their own and check their own progress anytime this is needed and when you feel that you have to do it. More novelty, you can see a text about koalas, a text about this strange, weird bird, the viper, as is being called, the seahorses, haunted castles in Britain, all these novelty, the wee man, construction, and of course the fun section with a lot of smile. Waiter, what is this fly doing in my soup? Learning to serve, sir, and different, types of humor. The song sheets that they add up this fun element I was telling you before, and specifically critical thinking sections that, as I said before, again, they train your students to, in the process, more of thinking. We don't care about what kind of ideas are going to be generated, but we care a lot about the process that these ideas are generated. Access, doesn't have only level 1. You can see that it has access 1, 2, 3, and 4 are fully available anytime you wish from Prosvещение with all these components that you can see on the screen. The teacher's resource pack, the workbook, the grammar book, and of course, the interactive whiteboard software anytime you need it. I'm going to switch to the next presentation because I know that I don't have that much time available. And the next thing I would like to talk to you about has to do with grammar. Now, grammar, I'm going to use a few principles about how to teach grammar from Express Publishing. And these are the principles that they can be found in Grammarway, which is a book that I'm going to use some examples, and in every possible grammar section or other grammar book by Express Publishing. This is, a very, very structural way that this appears in all the books. We always have these boxes where theory is very, very clearly presented. This is something that you should have at the back of your mind. Every single detail, every single part of theory is explained. You can actually go through the theory by having them read it, or it might be assigned, and this can be an element of flipped classroom as well. It might be assigned at home, so when they come back, they already know about these specific patterns of the language, and it might be much easier for you to deliver the lesson and explain them further. We always, before each one of the exercises, there are the picture prompts where they can get to know the unknown vocabulary or be reminded of unknown vocabulary. This makes their life much easier when they are about to fill in the blanks of any exercise. And you can see many more exercises, a lot of exercises that help them, use in context all these items. There's some matching. However, as I explained before, let us think, what's more important? To know the rules or to be able to play football? And the analogy here has to do with what's the point of knowing by heart, for example, all the usage of the tenses and when they are used if I don't know how to use them. And of course, you can't play football unless you know the rules, but you can't win World Cups without playing. So, plus, there might be times that the students may be wondering, Tell me again, why am I learning all this? Why I'm learning all this theory? And the reason should always be the idea of activation I was telling you before. Writing a postcard to a friend by using what you have learned, or an article, a scientific article, or a film review, or a sports commentary. You may be somewhere and you listen to somebody narrating or describing, making comments of something they watch on TV. They need to be able to deliver this. That is why in every single grammar explanation, in Grammarway, in Write-On, in every possible grammar input from Express Publishing, you will find the activation. Then say, then use, have the communication. Remember, break down grammar teaching, involve the students at all stages, drill and activate through tasks, use realistic tasks, and integrate in other skills. All these are the 3 steps that you can find in Grammarway and in all our grammar input. Grammar is not taught only with theory. Grammar needs to be activated, grammar needs to be spoken, and all the books by Express Publishing regarding grammar, Grammarway specifically, does promote this very same idea. The last thing that I would like to present to you from Express Publishing today has to do with our wonderful readers. Wonderful readers because they are classics and they can definitely promote a new way of teaching, of extra curricular activities. Why I cannot find it? I did find it, sorry for this small delay. I can start simply telling you that all these readers are fully available and they have some extra unique features for your learners. You can have readers for primary learners. All of them are accompanied by animation. This means that the students do not only read, but they can also watch the very same story.
Clever Puss goes to the castle and says to the giant man,
"Can you turn into an animal? I don't think you can."
"I can turn into an animal, or anything at all."
And the ogre turns.
Says. We have a different type of series which refers to primary learners. These are the readers that come with or without text. So you can use some of them simply with picture discussion, if you have a very long class, or with text, depending on how advanced are the kids regarding reading. And of course, you have also the classics, the Showtime readers. You have Pygmalion, The Wizard of Oz, all these titles that you see. And what is really special here is that you get the text, you get the recording, but at the back of the book, you get all the theatrical script, you get all the acting out script, so you can stage a theatrical performance. Never, ever underestimate this process. Practically, you go through all the text in the classroom, you explain all the words, and then you actually can stage it. It's a perfect exercise and what we call the perfect way so the students can retain the language for a longer period of time. When the students stage, when they act out, when they perform, they use their whole bodies, and actually this thing helps them retain information and retain language for a longer period. There might be students who don't want bulky texts or long text. There might be students who want something minimum, students who want, the basics. So we have these comic stripe readers where they can actually have minimum text, a lot of input, a lot of pictures, and help them, moving like this way. And of course, we have adapting the level, but preserving the authenticity of the language and the characters, the classics. lower down, but as I said, the plot is the same, nothing changes regarding these books. Fully dramatized audio that they can be listened as audiobooks, and a perfect extra curricular supplement if you want to inspire them a little bit or get to know the classics. And of course, there are also supplementary activities and exercises that can help them retain the language much easier. Don't forget that the topic should not just be interesting, the topic should be engaging and compelling. So sometimes the kids do not study because, excuse me, they simply don't find the topic interesting. That is why we have the definition between soft CLIL and hard CLIL. And we all know what this means, but it's going to be very difficult for a class to integrate full and go full hard CLIL. So soft CLIL gives us the opportunity to use the topics from CLIL in order to be integrated in a simple ELT class and thus have better achievement. That's why I highly recommend, if for a reason your classes do not like or do not want fiction, the non-fiction readers by Express Publishing, the CLIL readers by Express Publishing explore our amazing world, where you can see all these wonderful topics, engineering wonders, gharial crocodiles. You can see these fast facts that actually help them develop what we call as the social currency and make them feel important about what they know. Did you know that jellyfish, for example, have been on our planet for about 650 million years? And, help them get a better idea of the topic, some different topics as well, and some extra knowledge. But however, these non-fiction readers help them understand the complexity of non-fiction, which is a preparation for future text. All these undercurrent structures that can be found in a non-fictional text can actually be helpful for future text. And this is what we call expository texts, which are the texts that actually expose you to facts. And so if you are looking for another reason for this to happen, this might be the factual information to the subject area according to the cognitive learning of the students. These series, Explore Our World or Explore Our Amazing World, do practice exactly these skills. They can be for primary, they can be for secondary, and in a way they prepare your students for reading skills, for strategies, for the coming tests that they may be facing. Bottom line, when you assign a reader, no matter if it's CLIL or fiction or non-fiction, this is exactly what you are practicing with your students. You practice critical thinking, you practice justification, you practice the process of open mind thinking. And Express Publishing can actually provide this with all the readers. Let me show you all the extensive catalog from what we saw here today. And here are some extra pages. A very quick reminder, primary readers, all of them in rhyme, fully animated for primary learners. Then a picture version or the painted version of the other primary readers, the Showtime readers that we have here. The Showtime readers, more advanced, which come with the acting out and the dramatized sections at the back of the book of classes. The illustrated readers that come in a comic stripe form, where for the students who want minimum illustration and minimum text as well. And of course, the classics adapted for those of you who want something like that. And then Explore Our World readers, the CLIL readers for primary learners with all these perks and benefits that we saw before, and Explore Our Amazing World CLIL readers for secondary students. Wake up the adventure inside. More titles here. You can see polar bears, alligator, the loggerheads, the venomous snakes, Aboriginal Australians, gharial crocodiles, all of them, grizzly bears, killer whales, rainforests, can be an amazing source for your students. And with this particular slide, I would like to thank you for attending this presentation. All in all, those of you who teach teenagers, it's a very sensitive age. They need a lot of material, they need a lot of sources, and as much possibilities and options so they can have their brain intrigued. I hope that you got some nice ideas and some nice materials to use out from this webinar from Express Publishing. All of these titles are available through Просвещение, so we'll be looking forward to contact you anytime, and hopefully we'll be able to give you more information about our books. Thank you very much.